Hello and welcome to Walker Tea Review. I'm Jason Walker, and we have come together once more. We've done it for over 230 times now already to get together and taste tea and talk about those teas. A couple of things that have happened recently, been in the tea news, so to speak. Tika Schwedner, originally a German company, been in the Chicago area for several years, has just opened up a tea shop in Rockefeller Center in New York, so that's something worth checking out or looking at. Today, our news here is our Gyokuro that we're going to be looking at, and Gyokuro is a Japanese style of tea, Japanese origin of tea, and a couple of things that we're going to be talking about if you're going to be tasting along with me, or if you have this equipment, if you want to do this review at home. There are two ways to look at a tea. One is the pure kind of evaluation. If you were a tea buyer, you'd want to use much hotter water. You'd want to really let that steep for probably a longer time than what is recommended for at-home use, because you really want to draw out both the strengths and the weaknesses of that tea. Opposite that, or conversely, at home, you're often going to be following that method that brings out the specific flavors or nuances of the tea that you prefer. We're going to do something today, because we've got a delicate Japanese green tea. We're taking that middle road. We're going to be steeping it a little bit longer with a little bit of a hotter temperature than is probably preferred by most people, but it's going to open up a lot more flavors with it as well. So let's go ahead and get into that as we do. Now, first off, we're going to be using our Chinese Gaiwan. It allows us to control or put in the right amount of water. It allows us to, and leaf, and by taking the lid on and off, or not using the lid or using the lid, that allows us to control a little bit about how much heat is put into this. Now I've got my regular teaspoon, and I'm scooping out here. Pretty good sized spoon there. That's about a full spoon, and it's hanging over the edges, as you can see. Now, when you put that in this is about a 4-ounce Gaiwan. That will cover the bottom of your Gaiwan, so that's a good amount. Our water's been brought to a very low boil. It's been cooling now as I've been speaking, and that's probably about 30-40 seconds. So I'm guessing that this is a little bit hotter than what people often recommend for a Japanese green tea like this Gyokuro. So this one's probably around 190 or so, 190, 200, somewhere in there. But that's okay. One of the things we're going to do to kind of compensate for that is I'm going to leave the lid off for a while to kind of encourage more of that heat to rise up and escape from there, so it doesn't overcook these leaves. Okay, so I'm going to set that to the side for just a moment. Kind of introduce this tea now. This is from Mark Wendell, the Wendell Tea Company. marktwendell.com, I believe, is the address. This is their GyokuroJadeDew, and of course this is a Japanese green tea. You can get a 1/4 pound, which is what this is, 1/4 pound for $26 on their website currently. Notes about this tea indicate that this is a Gyokuro, and I want to make sure, I'm not sure I'm pronouncing this correctly, but it's Asahina, which is a varietal or type of tea. Usually with Japanese greens, the type is very strongly associated with a specific area or location. So that tells us a little bit about the background of this tea. And as we taste the tea, of course, we do look at the dry leaf, the wet leaf, and the liquor. So let's go ahead and kind of look at that aspect. First off, the dry leaf. I want to keep an eye on this because I do want this to steep thoroughly, but I don't want to overdo it. Because of the way Japanese teas are processed, you're getting very fine filaments. You get the steaming process, which gives you kind of very long, brittle shards. So that's something to note. Now, this particular Gyokuro, actually, to be honest, I would say this has got one of the more full, aromatic and pleasantly aromatic aromas of a lot of teas that I've come across. So And those smells are something like, there's a little bit of that creamy, brothy element. I mean, you get a little bit of something that's like a cream, something between like a cream spinach or like a good Japanese miso soup. There's somewhere in there. Okay, you're also getting a bit of a seaweed component. There is, and it's not overly fishy. It's more of the seaweed. If you go to the Japanese restaurants and you get the sushi rolls, those type of that very thin type of seaweed that comes out. Okay, I am going to go on, but I think I've reached a stopping point here in the steeping process. So I'm going to go ahead and get out my towel here, angle my lid over to the side a little bit so that I can pour this. Many people would recommend and prefer a steeping style that uses cooler water, even as far down as 160 degrees Fahrenheit, and to really to bring out the strength, you would want to steep longer, several minutes, sometimes up to or even beyond 5 minutes. So for that, again, depending on your preference. You can also a gyokuro is usually a very fine tea for cold brewing. You want to use a greater volume of dry leaf. You want to put that in your pitcher, add your cool water, and then place that in your refrigerator and let that cold brew overnight. Gives you a nice, refreshing, cool, sometimes even a bit salty aspect to that green tea. Okay. Now, going back to these dry leaves, though. One of the other positive aspects I find about this particular offering from Wendell is you're getting glossy. You're getting a lot of rich shimmer and sheen on these leaves. So that's a very positive aspect. They're not dull, flat looking, and also you're getting good size. Here's an example of a 1 inch plus in length filament rolled type of leaf, and you're going to notice that the finer the gyokuro, the greater the quality. They've gone through and they've removed any kind of stem or vein pieces, so that this is very delicate, tender pieces of leaf. You get a little bit. I'm looking down into the tin here. You are getting here and there a piece of more yellowish looking in color, which indicates that that's often a bit of a thicker piece, like a stem or the very base of the leaf as it attaches to the branch, or a thicker piece of vein that was running through a leaf. But overall, you're getting some nice shiny looking, and again, very thin strands for the most part, and good shine, good length, good size. Okay, this one, especially this one, at least on the top here, you're not getting a lot of a powdery element where it's all been crushed and ground up through just the packaging process or the processing itself. Okay, so that takes care of our dry leaf. Positive notes really coming out in that evaluation. Let's go ahead and look at our wet leaf for a moment. There is a bit. First off, there is a bit of that creaminess that we talked about in the cream spinach, although it's more subdued. There's a bit of that marine type of saltiness coming out as well. Something about this just smells salty. But then also with that, there is a wet kind of fermented grass. If you had mowed your yard, you had a clump of wet grass that had been sitting there, and it kind of built up a little bit of heat, a little bit of fermentation in there. There is that kind of musty, wet grass smell coming out in this. Okay, more so, and I would say that that wet grass, that fermented grass, is coming out more so in this one than I've experienced in some others. But when you talk about these leaves, with the wet leaf itself, you are getting nice, thick, full-size pieces here. Actually not very thick, they're actually pretty tender here. That piece actually is a bit more mature than some of the others I've come across. What else do we have here? I'm looking at this piece here. You're noticing that these are a rich green color, still in the green with a light tinge of yellow to the green. Okay, so while the dry leaf had more of that deep emerald green over towards the blue end of the spectrum, this one's, now it's been steeped, it is going a little more towards the green to the yellow end. And actually you are getting, as we talked about a little bit, the base of the leaf, the stem there where it did connect to the branch there. So there is a little bit of stemminess to this. Some pieces are a little bit thicker, but then again you do have the tender, more delicate, the dendricate, if you combine those words, dendricate. Alright, so we've looked at our leaf. Our leaf indicates here that we've got of course it's not the ultimate and the most refined, and for that price we're not really looking for. I mean, if you're paying this price, you're not really looking for that kind of supreme quality. This one is good quality. Okay, let's move on though and talk a little bit about our liquor. Now, as doing so, we do want to note that liquor, because I mentioned before, we were using a stronger, higher temperature with a good amount of steep time there. We're getting a stronger color. That's a fairly bright yellow, easing over towards the green there. Rich aroma though, and that's one of the purposes, of course, for a little bit extra heat, a little bit more time, really draws out the aroma. Good creamy, like I said, creamed broccoli, creamed spinach rather. Still that marine, that little bit of that light seaweed coming out as well. So let's go ahead here and give this a taste. When you give it a good strong steeping like this, one of the things that's going to happen is you get that darker color and you're getting a higher volume of astringency, and that's what's coming out here. Okay, so if you want stronger aroma, that at least in this particular cup, that will come alongside that greater astringency. Comparing to others that I've tasted, yes, I would say that balance of astringency and aroma and taste that are here together. If it's a higher quality, I can often get a little bit less astringency while still retaining that aroma and the flavor components there. So this one they're more closer on balance as far as amounts or intensity. Okay, again, more of that, a little bit of a salty, still a brothy, a chicken soup, a miso soup type of brothiness in there. So that's got a nice feel to it. That adds to the component there. Still some seaweed components coming out in the aroma as well. Because we use the higher temperature, less of the sweetness is coming out. It's really getting overpowered by the astringency aspect of this. And that astringency, well, as it cools now a little bit, even more, some of the sweetness is coming out. Sweetness is especially coming out in the aftertaste and the back of the mouth. So there is that vegetal sweetness. It is, what's the word I'm looking for? It's like a snow pea. There's that snow pea type of sweetness in the back component there. And so the astringency is there. It drops off fairly quickly. So if you want that intensity, you can endure that astringency for a brief period, and what you're left with in that back component is, again, that kind of snow pea type of sweetness there. A little bit of that combined with a little bit of the salty seaweed aspect. And the astringency, as when it is there, it does give this kind of metallic feel to it. It's like it does feel kind of like you've been sucking on a piece of metal. That's and a common component that comes with the astringency of Japanese green teas because of the varietals used, because of the way that it's treated. So, looking at this tea as a whole, nice shiny, good sized filament or leaf pieces in the dry leaf. Wet leaf, a richer, more fermented grass type of aroma coming off of that. Okay, wet cup here. We did have intensity of aroma and astringency that were basically near the same level. And as I said, in some teas I've looked at that astringency is more subdued in comparison to the taste and aroma. So, looking at this tea as a whole, it does have all the components to it. You would want to use a lower temperature. Again, we did this to kind of really bring out what was, to really stress this tea out, because, you know, just like people, you put them in a stressful environment and you come to find out who and what they really are. They show their true colors more, and that's what we found here as well. So when we looked at this tea and we saw its true colors, we found we give this tea a score of 88. It has some good components to it. You want to cool it down, put it in a more comfortable environment for itself so that it can really shine in that sweet component while still bringing out that kind of salty seaweed component and dropping off some of that metallic mouthfeel slash taste, aftertaste that can be there as well. So come back and join us next time on Walker Tea Review. We've got a lovely Dongding, and I may have already given away a little bit too much already by calling it lovely. We'll see how lovely it can be. And then we're going to be doing a little bit something different with a black tea, and that's going to be this week here at Walker Tea Review.